This, of course, is a fairy tale. Or not a fairy tale. Well, that is, it seems like not a fairy tale, but also, it seems like no one has officially confirmed anything. And who will confirm it, if all the participants of the story either disappeared or, well, in general, they will not confirm it anymore. And it all started in 1959, when a Soviet expedition, which one exactly? Here the sources are confused, because either polar explorers, or even some geologists, came across a black monolith in Antarctica. Monolith, that's what they called it later. And in fact, it was a block. Black, strange, smooth, without cracks. Well, that is, the ice did not sharpen it, the wind did not grind it. As if it was put yesterday. Dimensions, they say, were somewhere 3 meters in height and about a meter in width. Or in length. Here again, who tells it how? In general, they found it, they began to dig it out. The ice was thick, and it was difficult to move, but no one was in a hurry. Soviet science was known for its thoroughness. Until one of the scientists started acting strangely. His name was, like, Igor, or maybe not Igor. There is silence in the reports. They say he had a good education, but his nerves are weak. Then again, maybe the opposite. Anyway, as soon as they started digging up the monolith, he suddenly froze, turned blue and said, "It's calling me." They tell him, "Igor, what are you doing?" And he says, "It's calling my name." By the way, none of the survivors repeated his name. After that, he started screaming. It was so loud that everyone felt a chill. Maybe it was the Antarctic, but it was a strange coincidence. They calmed him down, put him in a tent, and the next morning, he was gone. This is where things get interesting. First, an inscription appeared on the ice in front of his tent. Something there, some squiggles that no one could understand. And it looked like it had just been scratched, even though there was almost no ice in that place. Secondly, no trace of him was found anywhere. It was as if he had disappeared. Thirdly, the rest of the expedition members got back very quickly. And even their reports say something vague. They say, "A sudden change in weather conditions forced the work to stop," although no storms were officially recorded at that time. And it seems that this story could have been forgotten. But no. Because in 1962, an American expedition ran into the same area, approximately, because no one knows for sure. The strangest thing was that they found a diary written by one of the Soviet researchers. Well, a diary is a bit of an exaggeration. There were a few pages, some with fingerprints, which were later identified as being of unknown origin, some notes in Russian, mostly incoherent, but the most important thing was the last sentence. He was awakened. It was written in all caps, as if the person who wrote it was in a panic. The Americans took it to a laboratory, of course. They ran tests. The paper was Soviet. The ink is the same. The age is the same. But no one understood what the phrase meant. By the way, they never made it to the monolith. Because they were also scared of something. Or someone. Or, well, officially, the weather conditions changed. Science, of course, says that there is no monolith in Antarctica. That it's all just stories, rumors, and misinformation. That there is no evidence. But what's strange? In 1987, Soviet researchers suddenly decided to conduct some secret operations in the same region. What they were about is unknown. And the documents on them are still classified. So, about these closed works. No one really knows what the Soviet scientists were looking for there in 1987. The archives are closed. There is not a single official report. However, there are strange indirect clues, if I may say so. For example, in the winter of 1987, a full cargo IL-76 plane with some containers flew there. However, it returned empty. Well, officially it returned empty. And this is where things get murky. There are rumors that there was something related to this monolith in those containers. Allegedly, Soviet scientists were able to dig it out in its entirety. Allegedly, there was something even stranger beneath the ice, whether it was an entrance to somewhere, another structure, or something that was better left untouched. However, there is no evidence to support these claims. Then, in 1989, a former employee of a secret laboratory from Novosibirsk, I think, blurted out in a drunken conversation that something had been found in Antarctica that shouldn't have been awakened. Of course, he was quickly brought to heel, and he never mentioned it again. But the rumors spread. And in 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed, several former employees of the USSR Academy of Sciences went abroad. And one of them, a certain V, in an interview with some obscure American magazine, said that in 1987, an object of extraterrestrial origin was discovered in Antarctica. After that, he mysteriously disappeared. What exactly could be under the ice is unclear. There are theories that the monolith is not just a stone, but something like a lid. That underneath it is something that was buried millions of years ago. And that in 1959, scientists accidentally woke it up. Someone says that this is an ancient civilization. Someone says that this is something indescribable, non-existent in our ideas of reality. But the strangest thing happened in 2016. Then Patriarch Kirill suddenly flew to Antarctica. It would seem that there is such a thing, but he didn't just fly like that. He visited one of the most restricted areas, and after that he said something very strange. They say, humanity is facing a great challenge. And then U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry flew there. In the midst of the American presidential race, when he clearly had no time for the icy continent. And that's where the rumors really started. Kerry flew in and spent several hours in an unknown location. Then he left. Officially, he was checking the environmental situation. But who cares about that during an election? They found something there. Or they didn't find anything. Or they found something, but it would have been better if they hadn't. And that's it. Or is it? And then something strange happens. After Kirill and Kerry's visit to Antarctica, scientists suddenly became more frequent. Either geologists, or the military, or even people whose names don't appear anywhere. And all as one, to the closed zones. And it was in the area where the monolith was once found. A coincidence? Well, maybe. But here's what's interesting. In 2017, a black anomaly suddenly appeared on one of the satellite images of Antarctica. Oval, about 300 meters long. It looks like a shadow, or a crater, or a hole in the ice. Satellite agencies said it was a shooting error, a technical glitch. Only a few days later, the picture was replaced with a new one, where this anomaly was no longer present. And all would be fine. If a couple of months before that, a former U.S. Marine, who served on a polar base, did not declare that in Antarctica, the entrance to something huge was discovered. But this is not the end. In 2018, several research stations suddenly lost contact with the outside world for 48 hours. No one knows what happened. After the connection was restored, the expedition members provided strange comments about the incident. They said, "It was just a technical issue. And there's no need to worry." However, one of the technicians working at the base later revealed to his friends that there was light and a sound, like someone was calling out. After that, he quit his job and left in an unknown direction. But the most mysterious thing happened in 2021. It is rumored that then, in one of the Antarctic regions, a strange radio signal was heard. It was recorded by several observatories at once. The frequency is non-standard, a recurring pattern. Someone says it's just noise. But what's strange is that the signals seem to respond to certain requests. It was like someone was communicating. Science, of course, denies everything. But for some reason, in the same year, a new station was urgently started in Antarctica. And without any press releases. They just built, and that's it. And in December 2023, one of the explorers, returning from a polar base, said to a friend over a cup of tea, or not, "We've awakened something. And now it's watching." And then he disappeared. So now you have to decide whether there's something there or not. Now let's go back to 1959. Because if you look carefully at all the odd things that happened later, it becomes clear that everything started back then. The very monolith that Soviet scientists found. No one has ever seen it again. Not a single expedition, country, or photograph. It's as if it simply disappeared. But did it? There's a strange story that circulated among the polar explorers who worked in Antarctica in the 1960s. Allegedly, in 1959, the Soviet researchers didn't immediately leave after the scientists' disappearance. Instead, they continued their work. According to the story, after a few days, someone finally decided to try scanning the monolith. However, the signal didn't return. Well, I mean, when you scan a regular rock, the signal goes through, it bounces back, and you get a picture, density, depth, structure. But here, nothing. It's like the monolith didn't exist. That's strange enough. But it gets worse. One of the scientists, rumor has it his name was Mikhail, but no one knows for sure, kept a diary. And this diary is perhaps the most frightening part of the whole story, because the entries in it become more and more strange. At first he writes about scientific data, coordinates, weather, the state of the ice. Ordinary. But from a certain point something appears that cannot be explained. Monolith changed color. Or is it just me? I heard a sound at night. Very quiet. Like someone breathing under the ice. No one believes it, but the ice under the monolith is not like the ice around it. It's unnatural. And then the recording, made not exactly, with a trembling handwriting. It opened. After that, the diary ends. There is no record of what exactly he saw. There is no explanation. Only fragments of sentences, torn pages, and a final, sweeping, terrified flourish. We shouldn't have touched him. According to the official version, Mikhail, along with several other members of the expedition, died during a snowfall. However, there is no data about such a collapse in those areas. And the most terrifying thing is that those who survived refused to talk about what happened. It was as if they were still afraid even years later. But of what? Perhaps it was at that moment, in 1959, that something came to light. Maybe it wasn't just a monolith. And the worst part is, if it did open, what exactly got out? These are real and very true events, so please subscribe and please like so that I can release more content like this. And I release videos every day.